scrumptious. I'm Samantha, and welcome to my tiny kitchen.
It's in your kitchen! Starring Samantha Vanhoever.
On this episode of In Your Kitchen, I'm going to be showing you my favorite chili recipe. The first thing I love about this recipe is that it's not a crock-pot recipe, so it doesn't take 6 to 8 hours before you can eat it. It is a stovetop recipe that is ready to eat within about 30 minutes to an hour of when you start to cook it. I found this recipe a few years ago on Pinterest when I was looking for a chili recipe that would feed a lot of people. I'm talking like 10 to 15 people. And I keep going back to it because it's delicious and it really does feed a lot of people. And I also switch out the ground beef for ground turkey. There's a lot of reasons for that too, and we'll go over that when we start to cook it.
Jasper, do you enjoy the chili?
Yes, he does get some sometimes. So let's go over the ingredients.
You'll need 3 pounds of ground turkey, and of course a whole bunch of beans. Dark red kidney beans, black beans, pinto beans, more dark red kidney beans, and more black beans. 2 8-ounce cans of tomato sauce, 2 16-ounce cans of tomato soup, a jar of minced garlic, some table salt, and good old black pepper, cumin, crushed red pepper to your taste, chili powder of course, white vinegar, macadamia oil or olive oil, and finally 2 cups of diced peppers and 2 cups of diced onion.
Now that we're finished with the ingredients, we're going to go to our first step, which is browning the ground turkey. Once you've got it all in the pan, you're going to want to eventually turn it up to having a higher temperature. Out of 9, I have mine sitting between 7 and 8. And I do add some salt and pepper to taste. And for me, this is also where the red pepper comes into play. I like to sprinkle some into the meat as it cooks, just to jumpstart some of that hotter flavor. One of the nice things about using turkey is that you don't have to drain the extra liquid at the end. Most of that's not actually fat. Most of that's water. So it's gonna keep a nice flavor for the meat, and you can add it right into the stew, and it will help add to some of that, I guess, soupy texture for the chili. Now that the turkey is all ground, we can move it to the side. I did lower the temperature just a little bit because we're going to move on to sauteing the garlic and the vegetables. So we're just going to scoot it out. It's okay that the turkey stays as it is, just to cool. And as this pot warms up a little bit, I'm going to grab some oil. The recipe calls for, I think it's like 2 tablespoons. This is one of the changes I've made to the recipe. I started eyeballing just about everything. I know that the goal is just to saute the vegetables and the garlic. And we like macadamia nut oil. It's a really healthy fat. I used to use olive oil. I prefer macadamia now. The recipe calls for 2 teaspoons. I don't measure very accurately. I just grab 2 and throw them in there. You don't need to give that too much time before you add your pepper and onion. And you can throw it all in. The onion and pepper are going to produce a lot of moisture. So you shouldn't have to worry about it burning to the bottom. But I would give it a thorough stir before moving on. You really only need to let this saute for 2 to 3 minutes. And the next thing that we're going to be doing is adding the tomato soup and the tomato sauce. While you have the peppers and garlic sauteing, you can start by rinsing your beans. If you get canned beans, to me they're really slimy, and you don't need the extra juice that's on them. So you can just rinse them off in cool water. Our turkey is browned, our beans are rinsed, and our vegetables are sauteed, so we're ready to add the sauces. I'm going to start by adding the 2 cans of tomato soup. Eventually we are going to add about a can to a can and a half's worth of water to the batch. So I set the cans to the side because then I can rinse the rest of that soup into it. I do like to mix it in as I go, just to ensure that nothing starts to burn as things get added. Okay, it's not starting to boil quite yet, and that's okay, but it is getting pretty hot. So I'm going to go ahead and add my seasonings before it starts to get too hot. I do start with the chili powder. You will use almost all of this. I know it doesn't look like it, but you will. The recipe calls for 6 tablespoons. When I first started cooking it, I started with about 5 or 4 to 5 because I thought 6 was too much. But now I do get closer to that 6 mark. And again, I clearly don't use level scoops. I just kind of eyeball it. And with how much extra water I add, I don't worry too much about the fact that I'm probably over pouring on the chili powder. That's probably gonna do 1 more. We'll say good. A little bit more. Because it is continuing to get hotter and hotter, and so I like to stir it in so that flavor can start to open up right away. I hope you like it spicy. Okay, next you want your 2 teaspoons of the ground cumin. Come in however you say it. It's just fine with me. 2 teaspoons of salt. 1 of pepper. And that should be all of our seasonings for now. So I'm going to stir that all in. I'm going to let that soak up and simmer and cook. I'm actually going to let this come to a simmer, and I'm going to let it do that for about 15 minutes before I add our final step, which is the white vinegar. It's really good. As it simmers, you are going to want to occasionally stir it. I intentionally will drag my stir spoon across the bottom just to make sure that there's nothing burning against the bottom. Usually if something burns, it's going to be any meat that falls to the bottom and just sits there. So when you stir, make sure you go all the way to the bottom. Okay, we're ready for our final step, which is adding the 2 tablespoons of white vinegar. For this part, I am going to drop the temperature down to right between 4 and 5. After you add the vinegar, the longest you should probably let it sit and continue to simmer would be 5 minutes. But the best part about chili is you can let it cook for quite a while and it's still going to taste really good. So for me, I will drop it down to a lower temperature and I will let it sit longer than 5 minutes and just kind of get at it when I'm ready. So once your vinegar is in, you'll want to mix it. Give it a good mix, I guess. Let it sit for at least 5 minutes and then you're ready to enjoy.
Oh, Bobo's want some.
You want some chili? I think it's ready. It's definitely ready. I like to top my chili off with some finely shredded sharp cheddar cheese, and by some I mean a lot. I like sour cream, and I like to dip some Frito scoops in there too. If you really like it spicy, there's some jalapenos for you. did it. You want some? Spoiled rotten. Thanks for watching in your kitchen.